Hello, everyone. Today I will introduce our proposal to you. First of all, this is the members of our group. Let's introduce the following content together. Our proposal consists of six parts, namely title, problem statement, literature review, research questions, research objectives, and research methodologies. The title of the proposal is to explore the impact of cultural values on scientific communication using China as an example. This study will use a combination of quantitative and qualitative research methodologies to analyze the mutual influence between Chinese cultural values and the science communication process. The part two is problem statement. In the era of globalization, effective science communication plays a crucial role in promoting public understanding and the appreciation of scientific contributions. However, cultural values have a significant impact on the way scientific information is disseminated and received. In China, deeply rooted cultural principles such as collectivism, harmony, and respect for authority may shape the process of science communication in unique ways. This cultural dynamic raises the question what impact do these Chinese cultural values have on the process of scientific information dissemination? Furthermore, with the increasing popularity of digital platforms and social media, the traditional framework of science communication is being reshaped. Against the backdrop of China, where cultural values interweave with evolving technologies, this transformation brings about new opportunities and challenges. The integration of these platforms can both reinforce traditional values and introduce more international perspectives, influencing the public's attitude towards science and technology. Therefore, it is worth considering how online media is reshaping the dissemination of scientific knowledge in the context of China culture. Education, as another crucial channel for science communication, also reflects the interaction of cultural values. Incorporating Chinese cultural principles into curricular and teaching practices may affect students' scientific literacy, critical thinking, and creative, thereby shaping the scientific attitudes of the next generation. Thus, it is also necessary for us to study how Chinese education resources and curricular embody national cultural values in the teaching and dissemination of scientific knowledge. Despite the growing recognition of these challenges, this is limited understanding of how Chinese values influence science communication in domestic and global context. Addressing this gap is essential to foster more inclusive and effective communication strategies that respect cultural diversity while promoting broader scientific engagement.
For the part three, it is literature review. The first one is Chinese communication characteristics the yin-yang perspective. In Fanti Footage of 2011, in the context it focuses on Chinese rapid economic growth and globalization, particularly during the transition from Mao to market-driven economy. Literature review using the yin-yang first philosophy to explain tradition and change in Chinese communication characteristic. Chinese negotiation can be both formal and sincere as well as informed and insincere, depending on the context, changing the qualities or confusion stereotypes. Introduce yin-yang philosophies as a framework to view culture and dynamics and evolving, offering a fresh perspective. The second is some reflection on science popularization and science culture in China. Tang as 2019 examines China's shift towards cultural and spirit enrichment alongside economic growth. Post 2017 National Growth Congress. Competral analyze imploring the transition from science popularization to science cultural contraction. The tension exists between traditional science popularized quick one-way communication, and the current push for science cultural long-term interactive engagement proposes science cultural construction, emphasizing furthering scientific views building infrastructure for science and public engagement through crowdsourcing and crowding funds. And the second one is network games and complementary communication of Chinese excellent traditional culture, which is Hu Wai Zhu Ji 2022, explores the dissemination of traditional Chinese culture through online games in the context of globalization and digitalization, with a focus on younger generations. Case analyze and stereotype exploration, analyzing representative Chinese online games. Yeah. And cultural symbols in games may sometimes be oversimplified or commercialization, potentially reducing their autonomy and depth. Introduce cultural recreation in digital media, where traditional culture shift from static preservation to dynamic representation. And cultural symbols through story, character design, and games machines. And the last one is an analysis of Chinese and Korean on cultural symbols from the perspective of cultural interaction theory. Zhang, H. 2020. Analyze the cultural symbols of Beyond Festival in China and Korea through cultural interaction theory, emphasizing regional values and history. Compare, analyze, and cultural theory. And for the Mid-Autumn Festival in China and Korea, despite similar themes, variation in culture emphasize challenges the notion of the fully unified cultural experience. Proper sampling adaptation, where cultural samplings are within different cultural contexts to reflect unique values and histories, promoting unified and diversity and cross-cultural exchange. Thank you.
For this assignment, I will introduce the part of research question, which is also the part 4. So the role of science communication is very essential in the light of globalization, as it allows the international public to understand and appreciate the contribution of science. However, there is usually an interplay between cultural value and the mechanism through which the scientific information is communicated that determines the success of such communication. This then brings us to consider the implications of Chinese values and science communication in China and elsewhere. So among the most pertinent issue this paper seeks to address is what effect do collected Chinese value like collectivism, harmony, and respect for authority have on the process of communication of scientific information in China? This information is useful in a wider context as these values are likely to have major effects on public attitude towards science and technology. For example, the idea of harmony frequently downplays the conflict and the focus on the maintenance of the social order and the overall goods of the group, which might influence the stories that are acceptable in science communication. This raised the more challenging issue of whether science communicators in China give more emphasis to such science that is supportive to these values and ignore other individualistic or critical views that are necessary in the science. Furthermore, the impact of Chinese value is not confined to internal communication. It also conflictuates international discussions. In what ways do Chinese value in the domain of science communication shape global partnerships and perceptions regarding Chinese scientific innovators? As China asserts its role as a prominent force of the worldwide science and technology, gaining insights into the cultural foundation that inform its scientific narratives is becoming progressively significant. This question is an invitation to reflect on what perception international audience may have of scientific project initiative driven by China and what context cultural value either help or hinder collaborative efforts in scientific research. With the rise of social media and digital platforms, an important question is how are these online media reshaping the way scientific knowledge is communicated under the condition of Chinese cultural contexts? The integration of digital technology into the domain of science communication has changed the dynamic of how information is spread and consumed. Accordingly, this research question seeks to explore whether this platform promote tradition Chinese value or challenging them by exposing audience to a broader range of perspectives. It also explores how digital communication may help bringing the force of new generation of science communicators who are more likely to adopt more international mindset, thus potentially triggering a change in the way scientific knowledge is framed in the relation of cultural values. Finally, the area of education practice is another rich area for exploration. How do Chinese education resources and curricula reflect the country's cultural values in the teaching and popularization of scientific knowledge? Educational systems are significant in the shaping the way young people develop scientific literacy. This question will explore to what context traditional science values are integrated into teaching method and whether this has any impact on students' view about the science, their ability for critical thinking, and their potential for creativity. In the final analysis, this study tries to answer the complex interaction between Chinese value and the field of science communication through this central question. In this study, we explore cultural variables that influence scientific communication with the hope that we could enhancing our understanding of the dissemination of science in a context where traditional values hold significant sway, ultimately towards a deeper appreciation of the role of the science within Chinese society and its interaction on the global stage. The results obtained from this study may provide important perspectives for science communicators, educators, and policymakers who are aiming to understand the intricacies of the cultural context in the communication of scientific information.
Today I am excited to share the research objective of our study. Understanding this objective will help us systematically analyze how cultural value influence science communication meticulously and uncover both their benefits and limitations. Our primary goal is to comprehensively analyze the dual impact of Chinese cultural value on science communication. Particularly, we aim to explore how core cultural values such as collectivism, harmony, and respect for authority shape the mitigation of communicating scientific knowledge. While these values support effective dissemination of information, they can also constrain diversity and critical thinking. Building on this primary goal, we now turn to the sub-objective that break down this topic into manageable and focused areas of investigation. We will examine how the cultural value of harmony influences information selection and narrative structure in science communication. In China, harmony often emphasizes social order and collective interest. This ensures smooth and consistent messaging, but may discourage the inclusion of critical or dissenting perspectives. Secondly, respect for authority enhances the credibility and efficiency of science communication. However, this deference may spread public critical thinking and multi-perspective discourse, as questioning authority is often culturally discouraged. Lastly, we aim to investigate how the concept of phrase influences science communication. In Chinese culture, maintaining harmony and avoiding public embarrassment often take precedence, which can offer the accuracy and urgency of disseminating scientific information. The second major research objective is to analyze the influence of digital technology on the interplay between science communication and cultural values. Social media and digital platforms offer new opportunities for reshaping communication patterns. But do they challenge traditional cultural values by introducing diversity and cross-cultural perspectives, or do they reinforce them? Let's delve into the sub-objective under this goal. We aim to explore whether digital platforms expand diversity in science communication or reinforce the dominance of traditional values. Secondly, we will also study how digital science communicators balance cultural value with internationalized thinking, driving innovation in the field. The final research objective is to examine the role of a Chinese educational system in embedding cultural value within science communication, while also analyzing their impact on student scientific literacy, critical thinking, and creativity. To achieve this, we have identified two key sub-objectives. Firstly, we will evaluate how values like respect for authority and harmony are embedded in teaching method, and how they shape students' receptions of science. Additionally, we aim to assess whether educational reforms promoted creativity and critical thinking, equipping science students with the skills to engage with science in a globalized context.
Hello everyone, today I will be introducing my research methodology and goals, which focus on how Chinese cultural values influence the dissemination of scientific knowledge, as well as how these values are reflected in the education system. And the first part is the influence of cultural values on scientific dissemination. First, we explore the role of Chinese cultural values, such as collectivism, harmony, and respect for authority in scientific dissemination. To explain how these cultural values can both promote and hinder the dissemination of scientific knowledge, the qualitative research is to conduct in-depth interviews with experts in scientific communication, such as the scientists, media professionals, and analysis specific case studies in fields like public health, pandemic prevention, or environmental protection. And quantitative research is to design service targeting the public to understand their trust in and engagement with scientific content, analysis, media content, official announcements, social media discussions, to evaluate how cultural values are reflected in dissemination models. Next, we investigated how new media platforms are reshaping the dissemination of scientific knowledge within the Chinese cultural context. The research goal is to explore whether new media reinforces traditional cultural values or promotes diversity and cross-cultural perspectives in dissemination. The research methods include social network analysis, studying dissemination paths and audience interaction paths on platforms like Weibo and WeChat, focusing on topics such as environmental protection and healthcare. On the comparative studies is to compare science communication models on new media platforms in China and other countries to understand the role of cultural context. Experimental design is to conduct online experiments to test the effectiveness of various communication strategies, such as authoritative and participatory approaches. And content analysis to analyze articles, videos, and discussions to identify how traditional cultural values like harmony or collectiveness interests are embedded in communication. And the third part is the role of education in scientific dissemination. Finally, we studied how Chinese educational resources and curricula incorporate cultural values and how this impacts students' scientific literacy. And the research goal is to investigate how the education system integrates cultural values into scientific education and accesses this influence on students' critical thinking and creativity. The textbook analysis related to science in textbooks at various educational levels to assess the representation of values like respect for authority or critical thinking. And the classroom observation is to observe science classes to document teaching methods reflecting values like collectivism or harmony. And the student surveys conduct surveys or interviews with students to understand their perception of scientific knowledge and cultural values, as well as the impact of teaching methods on their critical thinking. Conduct long-term studies to track changes in student scientific literacy and cultural awareness over time. And in summary, my research focuses on understanding the relationship between Chinese cultural values and scientific dissemination. I hope this work can provide valuable insight for improving communication strategies and education system. Thank you for your attention.